It's the Anime Movie Podcast with your hosts, Kat and Joe.
Hello and welcome to the Anime Movie Podcast with your hosts, Kat
And Joe.
and
Today we have a special guest, once again returning to the podcast by popular demand, Mr. Vance Tucker. Hello, Vance.
Hey, how's it going?
welcome.
Fucking fantastic.
Is it really popular demand, or is it just you guys want me back to help you out?
I think it's popular demand if both hosts want to bring you back.
Yeah.
Okay, that's popular.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, everyone knows Vance is the co-host of the Boys Watching Girls podcast with me, which has completed our run with girls, and then we did a bunch of bonus episodes, and we're currently trying to figure out what we're going to do next. But if you like the HBO series Girls and Lena Dunham, go over to that podcast where me and Vance talk literally everything that she's ever done, pretty much.
Yeah.
Or they tear her apart.
Well, less tearing apart than you'd think.
All right.
Yeah, no, we are very fair and balanced in our approach to our work,
much like
we
Fox
call it.
News.
Yeah, yeah, fair and balanced, just like Fox News. So.
Okay, good. Great.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be talking about Hayao Miyazaki 2001 film Spirited Away. And you might wonder why we haven't done this film yet, because I'd say it's probably one of his most famous films.
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely one that got attention because it won an Academy Award in 2003. It had a decently large theatrical release in America. There were billboards for it over, across Los Angeles. So it was one of the first anime films that I felt were almost mainstream. And if you get to, 30 or 40 episodes of an anime movie podcast, you might wonder why Spirited Away wasn't talked about yet.
Yeah.
And there's a reason.
Well, there is a reason. And so originally this was supposed to be one of the first episodes that we released ever. So we had a plan to release like 3 or 4 episodes right from the get-go. And Spirited Away was one of the episodes that we were planning to release as like, hey, this is our first introduction, like we're talking about Spirited Away. And then number one, I think that we had technical difficulties with it. I think that like something stopped recording at a certain point because we had to go away and then re-record something at the end. And number two, because we have a very intense debate about this movie that we didn't want to revisit until we felt we were ready. And it's been like several months since we recorded that first podcast.
Even this time watching it, like I teared up at one time and I was like,
Really?
really? I've seen this so many times.
Well, that's adorable. It still pulls at your heartstrings even after all these times. That's good to hear. I hated this movie.
Didn't fully expect that, actually. I don't know why I didn't expect that, but I didn't.
Yeah. So we had a debate. Feelings were hurt regarding this movie.
Things were taken personally.
Yes. And so now here we are with our moderator, Vance Tucker, who helped
back to mediate this.
Who helped moderate our previous debate where feelings may have been hurt and personal things may have happened with the girl who leapt through time. And so yeah, now we're back. We needed a third opinion here because there is a disparity.
I think to
with
make it
Spirited
more
Away.
fair and balanced.
Yes, like Fox News.
Yeah, and like the girls' podcast.
Yeah, we should just bleep all that out and just sub in something else. Fair and honest. I'll give it to you right now. fair and honest. You
Yes.
just throw that in there.
Perfect.
So before we get into all of our stuff, you want to do a quick synopsis of Spirited Away before we get into all the opinions and craziness that's going on?
Sure. Do you want me to do it?
Yes, I would love for you to do it.
Oh my god, is this the calm before the storm? Like, no, you can take it. Oh no, you take it. Oh man, this is gonna be
You know what,
ugly.
Vance? You take it.
All right. So this is all focused on a little girl called Chihiro who's 10 years old, and her family is moving to a new town. And seems like it's in the middle of nowhere. She's being taken away from all of her friends, etc. It's a big change for her. And they get onto sort of the wrong road and they end up doing a bit of off-roading. And her dad is doing the like, oh, we could take a shortcut. And ends up stopping at a dead end. And then they decide to do a little bit of exploring and they discover an abandoned amusement park. And Chihiro is really not keen on the whole situation and gets super bad vibes. And then there is a series of events that leads to her disappearing into a magical world.
Mm-hmm. Into a spirit realm. Yeah, that's a pretty good synopsis without spoiling anything. And then, yeah.
So normally we'll cover sort of some broad feelings about it. We'll talk a little bit about animation, about music, and about some of the other elements that...
Voice acting.
Yeah, so, giving our opinions and reviews on some of those things without giving details from the movie.
Let's have Vance talk about it first. Vance.
Yeah, I'm curious, Vance, was this
what
your
did you think of
first
this
time?
movie?
This was not my first time seeing this movie, but I didn't remember a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then watching the movie, certain parts, I was like, oh yeah, I did remember that. Oh, I do remember the like stink monster thing without giving too much away. But I like certain things stuck out to me, and I was like, oh yeah, I do remember watching this probably when it came out because I went to an art school, a lot of friends with animators and stuff. So I'm sure this was played at some point,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful, like it looks amazing. Rewatching this, that's the thing that I was blown away with.
Yeah, I mean, I have now seen this film so many times. So many times. And in just the past sort of year, 6 months to a year, I've seen it 3 times.
Wow.
And I think when you've seen a film so many times, you start to pay attention to other kinds of details in it. And this time around, I was really focused on the level of detail in the backgrounds, especially. Like every character in the background is hand animated, like beautifully. I think most of this film, they started out with hand drawings, and then a lot of it was digitized. So a lot of it was computer based, but it all started out with hand drawings, and there were thousands of cells that were hand drawn. But it's just so cool when you look at every single frame of this movie. There's something to say about it and something beautiful going on.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, a lot of the animation is very ornate and very, very detailed, and it is very it's crazy to see like just how much detail is put into it, and imagining what the animators have to go through in order to make that happen seems so horrible.
Yeah, I mean, so often the background characters are kind of doing the same movements over and over again. But if you're paying attention to the background on these, like each character is moving differently. Each one has like its own personality. You feel like all of them could have their own movie. You're like, I want to know more about that. That person obviously has a fully realized like personality and character, and I'm curious about what's going on with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Specifically like the 3 heads at one point when they're looking and they're all doing something different.
Yeah.
Like they all have an individual personality, even though they seem like they're one entity. But
Yeah, exactly. Music.
I kind of like the music. It was very fanciful and whimsical, which kind of goes along with the spiritual and zany nature of the movie and the zany nature of the setting, and how everything happening is super balls to the walls crazy at certain points. So I felt like the music fit, But yeah, it may have been a little loud at certain points, but I mean, it didn't bother me. It felt very, very Disney-ish though, which is why I was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is really Disney. So I looked back at my notes from the first time we recorded this podcast to see like if I was consistent in my opinions. And one of the consistencies was, number one, I did enjoy the music. I thought it was good. I thought it fit the movie very well. And the other thing was I thought the main character, Chihiro's voice actor, was insanely annoying and terrible.
How'd you feel about the voice actress for Chihiro, Vance?
It was fine. I felt like that was more of a character choice for her to be so bad. It paid off for me when she becomes better at stuff. And I was like, okay. Like, because she's such a klutz in the beginning. And it's like played up too much, I feel like.
Yeah, I think, they really drive home the idea that this main character, Chihiro, has a character arc, and they try to play up the being kind of a whiny, sullen brat and being a total klutz and a dope.
Literally, she's called a dope several times in this movie.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I was just reading an article about somebody saying that, often Chihiro is characterized as being whiny in the beginning, but they were making a couple of comments about, like, on rewatch, I was starting to notice these things, that she's really intuitively starting to catch on to some stuff that's wrong and bad. And so while she's doing this, like, no, don't go there, like, no, I don't want to, that when you start picking up on some of these signs, you can start to see, like, oh, she had every reason to have super bad vibes. And of course, if a kid is trying to tell their parents what to do, they're going to sound pretty whiny. But
you go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying that Chihiro in the Japanese version, her voice was much less irritating, I found. And Chihiro in the English dub is the same voice actor who played Lilo from Lilo and Stitch. Fun fact.
Okay.
I liked Lilo and Stitch a lot.
Well, I was going to say, I don't have a problem with her in the beginning not wanting to go into the cave and follow the parents.
Yeah.
Like, it was just more like once she's through there and once she's in the world, and she still seems like everything needs to be explained to her. Like, not the world stuff, but just like simple things. And like,
Yeah, and I think we'll get into that a bit more into the spoiler stuff. And I think there are some reasons for that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But where was I going with this? There was something else I wanted to say that was non-spoilery. Oh, so rest of the voice acting. How'd you feel?
Rest of the voice acting was fine. I felt like it has John Ratzenberger in it, which I didn't realize until I was looking at the cast later on. There's a woman that's voiced by the same person that voiced Megra from Hercules, which I like. I like that voice actress a lot. Think she's really great. The voice actor that does the old witch women, it's pretty good. It has an old witch woman voice. Think it's good. I think every other voice actor is very good. It's just that Chihiro's voice is so grating to me, and she only has like one level of just screaming.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen in the Japanese version.
Okay.
That's one thing that.
Yeah, I mean, I know that I read somewhere that this is the first Miyazaki movie where he actually cast a kid to do the voice acting of a kid. I think I read that correctly. And he should have casted somebody different, because she's just screaming her head off at certain points, and it was very annoying. And
yeah, I mean, it'd be interesting if that is true, because Miyazaki also said that he specifically made this film for 10-year-old girls.
Yeah.
And I mean, it has generally a lot of popularity. I wasn't going to say ubiquitous, because I'm sitting right here with someone who feels differently about it.
Oh man, the cracks are starting to show.
Yeah, but, fun fact before we get all crazy, I don't like this movie.
Yeah, I kind of got that from this. From I've seen this 3 times this year to your silence.
Yeah, I mean, this is also another reason why we didn't put this episode out as one of our first ones, because it's like, it would be like a major shot to our credibility to have one of the hosts of the Anime Movie Podcast be like, I don't like Spirited Away.
But I think the things that night, it went from I don't like it to this is absolute trash,
Yeah.
which we've seen a lot of movies, and some of them are really bad and deserve maybe even to have that said about them. And I still wouldn't say it. But here's the thing is I respect that some people like some movies and other people like other movies. Like, it is totally fine to not like a movie.
Mm-hmm.
But there are definitely different ways to talk about it that can range from inflammatory to very reasonable.
Yeah, I would like to compare and contrast what this recording is going to be like compared to the first one, because I feel like I've softened a little bit on some of my like I want to know, because I know that I was like the first recording I was like heated, I was upset, and
Yeah.
like I was like, this
Yeah.
movie fucking stinks.
Thing is, you showed up kind of upset that night. You were angry about something else that was
Oh,
going
yeah,
on.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think you came from the day hot, and then you did not like the movie at all. And then you got mean.
Yeah. Joe has a real aggro-ness about him that comes out at times, and you just gotta have to taper that down
Yeah.
and balance it out.
Yeah, watching it again, I was like, I still don't like this, but I wonder what I was so mad about the first time.
That's what I was wondering that entire podcast too, Joe.
That's what I was wondering when you said you guys had problems with this movie.
I took completely different notes for this one. I didn't have my other notebook from the first time, and I took notes, and then I looked at my old notes, and I'm very consistent in the things that I don't like and the reasons why I don't like them. And one of them is, and that's just like a constant throughout the movie, is Chihiro's voice actor. I
Yeah.
thought, and like, if you don't like somebody's voice actor and they're the main character, that's going to be a tough watch. And then you start to assign a bunch of other like negative things to them.
Yeah, of
because
course.
it's like, oh, everything that this person says is annoying because just listening to them is annoying. So this person must suck. So
It's like going on a date with somebody and their voice is so irritating. You can't stand it. Like, no matter how cool they are, it's going to be really hard for you to call them back.
I have a friend like that. I'm just
What,
like,
their
"Oh,
voice is like that?
Their voice is bad.
Oh, dear.
It's Vance Tucker. Hell yeah.
No, it couldn't
Hey,
be.
let's do 62 more episodes of the podcast.
Anything else before we get into spoilery stuff?
I think I just want to say that there's a lot in this film that has a lot of cultural relevance to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that's interesting to me is trying to figure out like which of these things would be sort of folklore that somebody as a Japanese watcher would recognize that an American audience wouldn't recognize, and how much of it is just purely out of the imagination of Hayao Miyazaki.
Yeah.
And from what I can tell, a lot of it is absolutely just out of his imagination,
Mm-hmm.
but based on some sort of folklore things. And it's just something I want to say in the non-spoiler portion, just in case somebody is listening and wants to stop at the spoiler jingle, is that this just has so many interesting, cool creatures that are super imaginative.
Mhm.
And each kind of feel like they have a life of their own. And so if you like, say, Guillermo del Toro, see, I tried to say it.
del
Actually, I tried to say it in a more gringo
Guillermo
way.
del Toro. Say it how you normally say it.
No, I'm not.
Impress Vance.
I'm not going to do that.
Jeez.
Or like if you watch, if you really like Pan's Labyrinth, then this film might really, really appeal to you. Although Pan's Labyrinth is much darker than this movie, because, like I said, it's made for a 10-year-old girl, but not in the way that America would make a movie for a 10-year-old girl.
Labyrinth?
Sure. So, as far as animated movies are concerned, they tend to be a little bit more cutesy than this, in my opinion. I do feel like this has to the people it will appeal to, it can cover a broad age spectrum.
Do you have any last comments, non-spoilery, Vance?
Now, all my comments are always spoilery.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, shall we get into it?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's spoil it.
They wouldn't spoil this, right?
Oh,
you
God.
can't spoil this,
Please
right?
don't.
No
Spoiler talk, anime movie podcast, spoiler talk.
So I don't like this movie. I think Chihiro's a dumbass through the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think what really upset me about this is because I went into it with the expectation of like, this is a great movie because I've heard so much about it. It's the first anime movie to win an Academy Award. It's got such high approval ratings throughout all critics. Critics fucking love this movie. So maybe it was a victim of high expectations and me coming into it being like, this is going to be a great movie. It's going to blow my mind. And then I came into it and I fucking hated Chihiro so much because she just acts so irrationally throughout this movie, in my opinion, in several ways that I'm like, this is not a likable main character. Again, like I said before, the voice actor I hated. And then the decisions that she's making throughout the movie run into conflict with what her main goal is, which is to save her parents who have been turned into pigs. A lot of the things that she does, like I can understand she can be confused. She's in a spirit realm where she doesn't understand what's going on. But then she has people telling her not to do certain things and to do certain things. And then she just completely doesn't adhere to their advice. And I'm just like, what the fuck are you doing? Don't you care about your parents and saving them? Do you want to be stuck in the spirit realm forever?
Oh, okay.
And I can cite several examples.
No, for me, I think the parents are the worst people in the movie.
I agree.
And I thought she should just stay. I thought she should stay in the spirit
thought
realm.
she should stay in the spirit realm?
Yeah.
This is a hot take, and I'm into it.
Yeah, I've never heard this take. Let's
The
hear it.
parents are insane. They're supposed to. They have movers coming,
Oh, yeah.
and they're like, oh, let's just walk through a tunnel. Hey, all right. And the daughter's like, I'm scared. I don't want to go. They're like, fine, just wait by the car. We're gonna go anyway.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Like,
I did
so
write that
then-
down about how
Yeah.
the mom at first, before they're about to go into the tunnel, is like, the movers are going to get there before we do. And the dad's like, they got keys. They can figure it out. And then she's like, they go in through the tunnel and she's like, we should spend the day here and have a picnic and shit. Like, what about those movers you were just worried about 2 seconds ago?
I feel like the dad is definitely the sort of person who would just be opening up bags of chips in the grocery store before paying for them.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, when they start eating that food, it's insane because there's a whole buffet set up, and they're eating it as if there's like, oh, sure, this is just a restaurant. We can just pay for it. I have credit cards and cash. I'm like, they obviously are making this for something. They don't make whatever this food is for. It's not just for
Yes.
random guests in a closed up place.
And especially if it's closed up, if it's an abandoned place, you might be like,
Yeah.
somebody might be having a weird wedding,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
in this abandoned amusement park, which is totally something somebody would do.
Yeah, they didn't just like, oh, I have a restaurant in a closed area and I'm just cooking a bunch of food hoping passerbys come through. Like, that was insane to me. And they just started eating, and and the little girl's like, why? I'm like, why is she the most rational person?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
The mom's walking through. She's like, oh, I wish we had a picnic, you know? I'm like, you just need to go back to the movers.
Yeah.
You have movers.
No, literally, that was when I wrote down the comment of like, 2 seconds ago, you were just concerned about these movers that were going to beat
Yeah.
you to your house. And now you're like, let's have a picnic. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
And this is all we get from the parents, and the parents they deserve to be turned into pigs. I don't know if they deserve to be eaten, but they are just not great.
I was reading an article that was on the Roger Ebert site. I couldn't find the author when I just tried to pull it up on my phone. I'll put it in the show notes. But she's a Japanese speaker and had been watching it, and she said she watched the Japanese version, the English dub, and then the Japanese version again, back to back to back. And I was like, wow, that's more than me
Wow.
in the last.
Yeah, definitely would kill myself if I had to do that.
And it was cool. She said that on rewatching it, she started to notice some things that would probably be picked up by a Japanese audience, but would be totally lost on Americans. And it was all about going through that abandoned amusement park, the area with all the sort of quote unquote restaurants that are there. And she said that there's a bunch of things about the characters that are written on the different signs that are a little bit off or a little bit weird, or they've just done one thing that if you look at it, you'd be like, oh, that would usually be something that would be on a restaurant. But there's a little thing that's changed that changes the whole meaning of what it actually is. And she had a whole list of all these different ones throughout that scene. But she was like, this to a Japanese audience, they'd see this and be like, oh, of course Chihiro should be freaking out right now because she's looking around and seeing all these things where the writing doesn't quite make sense, and she's realizing these aren't restaurants. You know,
Can the parents not read?
I guess they're not trying.
like they're going on a
focused on that smell, trying to find the smell.
And why was the dad driving so fast through that woods?
Because he's
Like,
got
they were-
four-wheel drive, Vance, on his Audi Quattro.
You know he's a Fox News watcher. Just throwing that out there. He would love it. He's all about the fair and balance. He's just like, I got money. Who cares? I'm eating all the food.
I think the first time we recorded this, I defended that decision. This is the thing that I thought was kind of like bullshit about them being turned into pigs. Because
Okay.
the dad is like asking around. He'd be like, hello? Is anybody here? And then they sit down and they're like, oh, this looks so good. You know, we'll pay them for sure. Like, they're interested in being like, we'll make this right. Like, but like, this looks so good. Thinking
Yeah,
back now,
you definitely
I think I
defended
did. I
that.
was-
Wait, you defended the decision to just walk through this tunnel thing?
No,
No,
I
to
defended
eat
this
the
to eat the
food.
food. Vance just rolled his eyes. So hard.
Exactly.
No, the food looked great, and like I get it, but it's like you're in the middle of nowhere. It's no way
Yeah,
that this is up for grabs.
No,
yeah.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
So they turn into pigs.
They get turned into pigs by some kind of curse.
Yeah, and we've seen Miyazaki have pigs and pig characters in different films, and he's not super fond of pigs.
Yeah, he hates pigs.
And I guess there's also in sort of Buddhist views, pigs represent certain things, but to Miyazaki, it represents, greed and gluttony and
Filth.
and filth. So the idea is that you're getting this punishment that's based on the morals of your actions, that this was done out of greed and gluttony and
Now, I know that to be true,
entitlement.
and I read somewhere else that, like, your shortcomings as a person make you change into something in the spirit realm. So what shortcomings could you have that make you a frog or 3 heads? Or, like, what?
I don't think that those are all humans.
Okay.
I think that humans aren't supposed to be there. I think they're mostly kami, which are the spirits as part of the Shinto religion.
Mm-hmm.
Are you familiar with Shinto, Vance?
Is that Death Note esque?
No. It's
I mean, what are they? What are they in Death Note? They're something else.
Shinigami.
Shinigami.
Yeah.
Basically, Shinto it's called a religion, but it's like a folkloric thing. And there's the original sort of people of Japan had these Shinto ideas, and it had to do with how basically there is a spirit of the river, there's a spirit of the tree, etc.
But it's not just like the spirit of it's like spirits of specific rivers and
Yeah.
specific forests and cities and stuff like that.
But then there would be some that would be more,
Like the head
more
honcho.
celebrated.
Yeah, the head honcho kami.
Yeah. And they have little shrines, and they will, do offerings and stuff to sort of keep the spirits happy. And this is kind of a broad generalization, but it was practiced very, very differently in all the different places because there was no head Shinto guy. You don't get like a pope.
Yeah.
It's not an organized religion. And then Buddhism kind of came into Japan, and then they kind of mixed the Shinto ideas with Buddhist ideas, and some of them kind of blur, and it depends on what part of Japan you're in to see how they celebrate things differently. But I was reading up on the kami and the yokai, and apparently when I was speaking to my sister about this movie, because she's been doing a PhD recently and has just did a Ghibli course as part of it, and she was saying that the people, well, the creatures who are in the bathhouse are yokai. And I was like, well, why aren't they kami? Because even kami is in the name of the film that translates to being spirited away. They use the word kami. And she didn't have a great explanation for me. So I went and read it up on it myself. And apparently yokai is when like kami go to the dark side.
Oh. Well, I mean, that whole bathhouse is everybody's greedy and disgusting as fuck.
Yeah,
like personality-wise, at least.
Yeah, and I kind of feel like the ones that have gone further into the sort of yokai sort of section might be like the big stink monster where they're like, oh no, we don't want him to come in here. He's really far gone. And the idea is that if you don't honor the spirits, or, you know, if you cut down the tree that the kami used to be the spirit of, they become yokai. And there is a lot of that in this film about people being, not, I keep saying people, but I don't mean people. These spirits being misplaced, or, you know, Haku was a river, but it was built over. And we get another river spirit who is polluted, like filled with trash, and takes on a totally different shape. So I'd buy that. That maybe this is, but you'd think they'd go to the bathhouse to go back to the kami side of things. Like they're honoring themselves with self-care of the bathhouse.
Yeah, for me, like I figured out like once I realized that the main guy is a river, is a river spirit, and I'm like, oh, okay, now the other one makes sense, and he was polluted, and I get that message, and it like I had to think about it like afterwards, you know?
Yeah.
That makes sense, but then it makes the movie seem like it's a part of it, but it's not really the message of the movie.
No, it's not at all. And that's something that's funny about Miyazaki to me, is that there's so much in the background and there's so much that you could talk about, but there's not a lot in his films that kind of shows you behind the curtain. There's he doesn't do a ton of expository stuff, and the English dub actually added in exposition for Chihiro to say, which I find makes her even more irritating that she has to like repeat everything that people say to her because they didn't think it would be clear enough for a child audience to be able to understand things. So she goes between being whiny and weirdly expository, which I don't think helps her be more likable.
Yeah.
But I think that there are things about her that are charming. And I wonder if it's because I first saw this film in 2002 when it first came out. And so I would have been a lot closer to 10 and a little girl. So, you know, to me, I felt that she was super relatable. And I don't know what it would be like if I watched this for the first time now. I think I'd probably find her more irritating because I think she's so endeared to me from, you know, being that character in a movie that I watched at that time that I related to so much.
Yeah, I mean, that also probably colors my opinion of it too, because the first time I saw it was when we watched it the first time for this podcast.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, this chick is so annoying. And the way that she's acting is so stupid. And the things that she's doing just make no sense. But I also feel like, you know, she does do a lot of exposition, but there is a lot of things that it's like, how did you know that was, like, she's explaining something out loud to no one, but it's like, how did you find that out? Like when they clean up the river spirit, and this is something that was consistent in my notes both times, is the river spirit barfs up some kind of nut or something.
Yeah. Oh, another walnut. We're going to talk about another walnut.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Girl Who Leapt Through Time parallels in this.
Yeah.
So this river spirit barfs up a nut after he's cleaned and everything, and she just like holds on to it, and she just like puts it in her pocket, and she's like, this is important. And then later on, after no one has told her anything, she's like, the river spirit told me this is medicine from the river spirit. I was like, how the fuck do you know that? Like, it's like, as soon as like that thing barfed that nut up at her, I would have just been like, ew, and just like threw it.
And now I remember you saying this, and it was one of the things where I was like, I need to think about that more. And I think that this time around, my only explanation for it, for her knowing that this might be medicine, is that she tastes it. And I was like, maybe it tastes like medicine to her.
Maybe. I will say that after they do clean up the river spirit, I think she may have said like, it's a river spirit. So that's when I was like, okay, so she must have known that it's a river spirit. I was like, how the fuck does she know that this is medicine and that it can help like cure literally anything?
Well, it seems to consistently break curses or magical things.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean,
there is no explanation for that.
Yeah, I don't know unless like the history, like river spirits offer up something, or like any spirit will offer up something if that's part of like the lore of it.
And
I
that's
don't
totally
know.
possible.
But I didn't get when she tasted it that she thought it was medicine. I thought it was like, oh, that's something you don't eat.
Yeah.
That was my vibe.
I mean, it looked like
Yeah.
a, you know, in like some trees, those little like spiky balls that come out of them. That's what it looked like to me. And I was like, I would never want to put that in my mouth. Like, what is it? It didn't look appetizing. It just looks some kind of like rock nut thing. Like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
That bugged me.
I think that this film has a lot of thematics that have to do with taking responsibility, working hard,
Having manners.
having manners. Yeah, I mean, I read something at one time about Miyazaki saying that it was really important to him for, like kids to have a good work ethic. And it was this very old man on a porch yelling at the neighbors' kids for being lazy and being on their phones all the time. But, this is a time when, cell phones were things. They weren't quite as fun or as technologically advanced as they are now. But this movie almost entirely lacks technology. You see the car of the parents. And then after that, when they go into this place, it's that kind of thing where it's like, I guess this is the year 2000 or a couple years after maybe, but we don't see anything that you see in modern technology. You don't see, a television, you don't see a phone, because everything's done by hand or, with magic.
There is a phone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, remember somebody
little...
calls Yubaba, then Yubaba has like a skull phone type
right.
thing.
But it's more magical than you think
it's
like technology based.
There's a train.
Yeah, which is pretty old technology.
Yeah.
And it's not a new looking train.
Yeah.
And so, Chihiro is stuck in this world where in order to stay in it, she needs to have a job. And then she's working hard manual labor. And I think it's kind of cool that, she's just going with it. She's like, okay, I guess I work now. This is what I do. But sometimes she looks really tired, but she doesn't complain about it, which I think is refreshing.
Yeah, I feel like having a little more of more of an intro with the family life with the parents and stuff would have been helpful to know like what she hasn't been doing.
I agree about that.
Because it seems like she'd be taking care of those people at home.
Yeah, based on that one interaction.
Yeah, I was like,
I
she's the
agree.
one that's like, she seems more rational and like, hey, don't touch the stove, it's hot. And they're like, oh, shut up. Oh, I burned my hand. Like, like, I feel like she's cleaning up after them all the time. But
I think,
according to this movie, she doesn't have to. She hasn't done anything. She's like a spoiled brat, but it doesn't feel that way.
So that's one thing that actually you brought up in the non-spoiler section that I wanted to talk about, is that it seems like Chihiro thinks that like, hey, there's bad vibes going into this thing. Maybe we shouldn't go. But if she doesn't go through all of this, she doesn't grow as a person. So everyone's like, oh, this is a smart thing. She knows that we shouldn't be here. But if she doesn't go there, she's still just an annoying brat that never learns anything.
True. I think
That's
we
like
we all have
every movie.
trepidations about big changes.
Yeah.
Most of us don't go into it just being like, I think this is all fine. No doubts here.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
Yeah. That's still not I don't give that a pass for the parents saying, oh, let's just walk through this. Let the movers wait.
Yeah, I mean, that is pretty fucking insane.
Well, we were talking about how she gives the medicine to the first person she gives the medicine to is what's his name? I noted that every time that she was getting helped, he was feeding her. Like he gave her the little jelly bean looking thing early.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second time he gave her those like white cake looking things.
Yeah,
so it was like every time he was trying to help her. Yeah, every time he was trying to help her, he was feeding her. and then later when it was time for her to help him, it was still feeding with the thing. So there's like a little bit of give and take there.
Maybe both of their
It
love
doesn't-
languages are acts of service.
Yeah. Or at least like eating and food, or at least like feeding someone back to health, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to bring up is about the way that Yubaba sort of has control over the creatures that work for her. What's implied is that in order to make a contract with Yubaba, you have to literally sign your name away, because you're signing a contract, but then she takes some of the letters away and she leaves you with one of them. I say letters, but these are symbols that usually stand for an entire syllable of a word. But what confused me for a very long time about this is that she takes away some of the letters from the contract that Chihiro's just signed with her, and she says, your name is Sen now. And I was like, how did you get that from Chihiro? And I did not understand until I read this article by the same Japanese speaker who's saying that that the word sen means 1,000 on its own, but when it's put into the middle of a word, the sound changes. So when it's in a word, it takes on the sound of chi. And the hero part of her name means questions. So
Oh, yeah.
her name meant 1,000 questions.
Yeah, I got 1,000 questions for her.
But essentially the idea is that she has to be with Yubaba and work for her until she can get her name back. And I just love the idea of, like, you know, she immediately starts to forget what her own name is, and that anyone working for her has to, like, they lose their identity in some way, and they can't get their freedom back without getting their identity back. And I like how that parallels with the parents, that the parents' loss of identity, but rather corporeally instead of through the name. But that goes through this film a lot.
It's kind of like a Ursula Ariel, give me your voice, because that was like her, like, oh, I'm a good singer. And she's like, well, then you have to give me your fucking voice if you want to become a human. It's very similar to that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I like that as kind of a trope. I like it more than you need to find a trinket to get a thing done. You know?
Well, they still try to do that, though.
Yeah, they
try
do
to
that a little bit.
in this. Yeah.
Yeah, there's still a trinket. It sneaks its way
Yeah.
in.
There's several trinkets that sneak their way in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's the medicine. There's what's her name? Zeniba's fucking thing.
That's the witch's seal is what I was
Yeah.
thinking about as the trinket you need to take to a place.
But I don't think the medicine is a trinket, because it's just given to her. She's never looking for it or has to take it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not treasure.
With my whole thing when I was saying that I thought she should just stay in the spirit world,
Yeah.
it didn't seem like the people that were working for Yubaba had it so bad when they could actually like openly like defy. No, they had it bad, but they could openly defy.
Disagree with
her.
this.
And
Disagree with this take.
All right, I'll say this: we're gonna skip right to the end when she has to choose which one of the pigs are her parents, right? And she chooses right, and everyone cheers for her. And Yubaba doesn't like strike them down or anything. They're just openly like cheering for someone to win against Yubaba, and with no fear whatsoever for the ramifications.
Yeah, but
Like,
doesn't
it doesn't free any of them. It doesn't do anything for them. Like
that was?
But I'm just saying, like, it didn't seem. It seemed like you could probably talk to Yubaba and get on like a level with her.
Yeah, but wouldn't
she-
you also agree that if everyone's cheering to fuck over Yubaba, they don't like her and they don't like being there? And even Lin says, like, I wish I could get out of here. Haku's like, I wish I could get out of here. This is the only way. Everyone's helping Chihiro to be like, here's how you get out. You can't be here. Get out of here.
I think now that Baby's back and Baby's like kind of like a voice of reason for Yubaba, I think things could get a little better.
That was a quick character arc for that baby, wasn't it?
Yeah, dude, I didn't know what you were talking about with baby. It was like baby's back. I was like, what?
Oh yeah, that's the baby. Yeah.
And his name is Bo, which literally just means child.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Yubaba's very creative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like those people have a cat and they call it Kitty.
So that was one of my big concerns and like points. The first time we recorded this is that Chihiro is supposed to like make all these connections with these people, and everybody's helping her out to get her parents back and to get her back to her world. And she hears that everyone talking to her is like, I wish I could get out of here. I want to leave. I wish I could leave. And then she just like leaves everybody slaves to Yubaba at the end of the movie. She's like, all right, cool. I got my shit done. See ya. Like she didn't try to like barter, like, I want to save Lin too, at least, or somebody else.
Yeah. And a bigger thing is, what is the economy of this world when gold is something? What are they spending their gold on?
Yeah, they're all like trapped in this bathhouse. Like they don't go anywhere.
And yet they're still really greedy about the gold thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm going to get this gold and I'm going to do what with it?
Could
Like,
they
I don't-
possibly like buy their freedom from Yubaba? Because she's obsessed with gold and jewels and everything too.
It's just like greed for greed's sake. It's like people are like, even the river monster comes and hands off like sludge.
Yeah, you know what?
Like-
This movie's a bunch of bullshit.
I just had questions about the gold and the economy and what happens during the day, because we see her go to sleep at night or when they're done working, but during the day the place isn't open, or
yeah,
is it? Like,
they
what's
seem
the deal
to be
with that?
nocturnal. I kind of thought that the kami and the yokai are in their wherever they're supposed to be during the day, in their tree or their river or whatever, and then they come at night to go to the bathhouse and then return to inhabit whatever thing they inhabit. It just seems like, they work during the day, they do spirit things, and then they need to come on at night to do the bathhouse stuff, and so they work nocturnally.
Yeah, it didn't seem like they were sleeping through the day though. It seems like she was waking up in the morning. I don't know.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And like when No Face is becoming like the huge rich guy and everyone's like, let's all work for him. It's during the day. And when Chihiro comes back to do the pig test thing, that's also during the day.
But they specifically say that the no face situation is like, go wake everybody up. I want a bath right now. I've got a lot of money, so you're gonna do this. And they were like, Kamaji's mad because he got woken up, so I wouldn't go see him right now. When Chihiro says she wants to go and,
Yeah,
and
but
talk
No
to him.
Face shows up at night and at first and everyone's asleep and he's like in the tub, and then the frog guy's like, what are you doing here? We're closed. Get out of here.
My guess was that was like super early in the morning before the sun came up, because it seemed like everybody had gone to bed for the night and there was nobody else there. And then he comes in, and I still feel like that's after hours.
Okay.
But let's talk about No Face for a second.
All right. Yeah.
Vance, you got excited there.
I was just gonna say something about
Say it.
just all these people working, like really working for No Face for the gold. Like these people are in this place because they did something to be here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they are so excited. No one's like, oh no, we have to work for this rich guy that's giving out gold. They're like excited too. Like, they're running around. Like,
Well, why are some of them human form and some of them are frogs and radish monsters and shit?
Now, this is something I do have questions about, and I do want to come back to No Face because I want to talk about him more.
because
oh, we have to talk about
as
No
we were
Face.
watching, Kat said No Face is just one of the most tragic characters I've ever seen, and I looked at her like, what?
I might be a little bit with Joe on this one, but I get where you're. I think I get where you're coming from, Kat. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the bathhouse, you have the staff members, and they both seem to be the same species of something. And the men look more frog-like. The women have like very slightly frog-like features, but then they've got something to make them a little more palatable and pretty. And they've got some like kind of markings on their face. And I don't know what they are. And this is one of the things that I keep trying to find out. I learned a couple more things doing some research today that I'd never known about before, but I still have not figured out what they are, but I know that the people who come to the people, why do I keep saying people? The creatures that come to the bathhouse, they're sort of clients. Those are definitely yokai.
Yeah.
Some people would say some of them are kami. I don't know.
Well, it's also weird because Lynn doesn't look like any of the other ones. Like the other workers at the bathhouse kind of look similar. They had the same kind of like fattish like features and kind of frog like, but Lynn is like very thin and she just looks like a regular lady. And I don't know.
I feel like she has some features that are similar because they all seem to have the same color of hair and
They have the same eyebrows.
and the same eyebrows, and she kind of still has that. She looks like all the other ones are the ugly cousin, and she's the pretty one. You know, where you can kind of see a resemblance, but you're like, oh, the genetics did a way better job on that one. But yeah, we don't really hear too much about Lynn's backstory either. We don't really know how people show up there, and that's one of those Miyazaki, I'm just not going to explain it kind of things.
Yeah.
And I like when I watch it, I just kind of go, I'm not going to think too hard about that.
I was really happy they didn't explain a ton of stuff. I was like, this is a spirit world bathhouse. They come, they go. That's it. Like I was like, all right, I'm kind of fine with that. Like,
I wish that they would have done it for Lynn, just because Lynn is kind of the main point of contact for Chihiro, and she has like a snippet of it, like, man, I wish I could get out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. And then it's just like, all right, good time for bed. Good night.
Yeah, and at one point when we first introduced to her, and the guy that runs the coal,
Kamaji.
Kamaji, doesn't he call Sen his granddaughter?
Yeah.
Or is he saying that about Len? Or what?
Kamaji's saying it about Chihiro. So he's that kind of like curmudgeon-y character with this really hard exterior who's actually got a super soft heart.
Oh, he's a great character.
What's that?
He's a great character.
He's a great character, yeah. And Miyazaki has that a few times since I was filming. And actually, a couple of animes have that as sort of a trope. And so when he's telling her, "I can't give you a job," but when Lynn shows up, he's like, "Can you help this girl get a job? She's totally my granddaughter. Please help her."
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't sure when he said that if he was like, "Oh yeah, he really is," or something.
No.
Because then we were having those flashbacks of her and Haku having like been together in underwater,
sex.
and I was like,
Please, she's a 10-year-old girl.
I will say the movie starts throwing in love real hard at the end.
It does, which makes no fucking sense.
Yeah, I just thought that was like the last 10 minutes did not need that for me. Me personally.
It was just out of nowhere that everyone's like, oh, she's doing this because she's in love with Haku.
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Only true love cures the curse. And I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
What is happening?
Yeah, and I think that Joe definitely brought that up on the first pod, and my response was kind of like, I don't think it goes into harder than a lot of other things of the genre, of the 10-year-old girl animation genre. I feel like it happens a lot, but absolutely could have lost that, and I would be fine.
I think you can keep it in as long as you sprinkle it in a little more.
Right.
That like the whole thing was like, oh, I have to save my parents, and then it was like, oh, now I have to save Haku.
Yes.
Oh, now I have to save someone else.
But
and
she
it was like,
really concerned with Haku throughout the film.
yes, but it should have just been her having to rescue Haku and not the parents, like, because then the parents become like an afterthought, and then I feel like there was and then it's just like. And I didn't like the parents, so I was like, fine, I don't care if you save them anymore. So, yeah, it was just like helping out it was like she was helping other people, and I was like fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I think when you go into a world like that that's so different and so cut off from your normal world, you do kind of start to forget about the things in the normal world. They start to take a backseat to your new reality. And I mean, she forgot her own name. Like, I'm not shocked that her parents went on the back burner a little bit.
See, that was.
Oh, no, I'm not blaming her. It's just like as a story propelling forward. That's not what propels the story forward. Like, they're like, you have to go in here or else you won't ever save your parents. I'm like, well, she kind of stuck in here anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
it's
that was.
not really.
I remember the first time I recorded this too. That was a big problem with me because it seemed like she just forgot about saving her parents for like a large portion of the film, and I was like, "How are you going to get back? Don't you care about getting back and getting back to your parents?"
Yeah. For me, it's not so much her forgetting. It's like it feels like the movie decides it doesn't care about them until it needs to again. And
Yeah, I agree with you,
yeah.
Vance, on that. I mean, I
Oh,
do
you
think
agree
that
with Vance?
I liked. He makes a good point. The way he's saying this, he makes a very good point.
It's the way you frame your words.
No, this is the way that I framed it, and I specifically remember this.
Actually respond?
No, you cannot. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Kat has the floor. Kat has the floor as the moderator.
Thank you, Vance. I do think that you're right about that. That the movie becomes less concerned about it. I do think that it does sprinkle in a little bit with some bits of dialogue, which Chihiro should be like, oh, but how am I ever gonna like get back to my parents? And then as soon as like a fucking bloody dragon like comes through, like breaks through these doors, and then you're attacked by these paper things, then your concern becomes that thing entirely. So I do think that this film is too long. And even though, I love it, watching it this time, I was like, there's always a part in it where I start to get a bit bored. And I probably wouldn't on first viewing. But when you're on viewing 13 or something, then there are some lulls sometimes.
Yeah.
And for me, that's some of the stuff right after that happens with Haku coming in as the bloodied dragon. And it does kind of feel like the story takes a different turn for a bit, but I don't really know how they should have done it differently.
I think the issue with it is that turn comes so late.
Right.
And I was like, I think I paused it at one point and I'm like, wait, they're wrapping this all up in like the next 10 minutes? Because they just introduced a whole bunch of new stuff.
Yeah.
Like the paper things and the new witch and like all of that. And I'm like, oh, okay. And we still have no face, who we haven't even talked about yet. But he's like has a whole thing. And I'm like, they're just going to wrap that up. And the way they wrap everything up is so quick. Like No Face just gets a new home and it's like, oh great, he's fine. I'm like, wait, what?
I did really want that for him though,
because he's the most tragic character in film history.
It's so sad.
And the turn for Granny to be like a good person, like
out of nowhere, she's just trying to kill Haku like 2 seconds ago, and then
it was just like,
you can call me Granny, and she's like, okay.
Yeah, it's like, oh. I was like, you were like the secret bad guy that came in like 20 minutes ago. I don't know. Yubaba has like, she's the bad guy, but she definitely has like.
Is she though?
It would be interesting.
She's awful. She does some terrible things.
Joe, you were saying that I was wrong that people should stay there.
I don't know. There's so much turning in this that I don't even. There's so many heel turns, face turns that I don't know what the fuck was going on a lot of the time. Like
it didn't feel like Yubaba was like, if this was like a workplace sitcom, she's just running a bathhouse and like she's just in over her head, and and everyone's doing crazy stuff. Like the frog is stealing money, and she always has to find out about it. And like none of the other frogs are cleaning a big bath, and then like you have to get these other people to clean it, and like tokens are being missing. Like it felt like she had a lot of things on her plate, and people weren't running around afraid of her all the time. It didn't feel like.
I will say, like at the end when Chihiro beats her in the like logic contest, it seemed like as Chihiro's walking away, she has like a little like tearful moment, like she's all grown up type of thing, and like you were rooting for her or something. Like, get the fuck out of here! You just tried to enslave her with like a really fucked up trick as well. Like the test was all fucked up.
Oh, and there was, because we're on the end, I have to talk about when Haku is free. And he's like, I'm going to go back and tell Yubaba I'm not going to work for her anymore. I'm like, why do you have to go back to tell her that?
What, you got to put in your fucking
free.
2 weeks, dude?
Like, what is going on?
But I think that kind of comes into that sort of like taking responsibility and that sort of this moral compass thing that you see a lot in this film where, I mean, I feel like Chihiro was put into the situation where they're like, you need to talk to No Face, and he's gone into crazy land, and she says, yes, this is like my fault, she fesses up to it. There's no like, oh, I didn't do that. I didn't, or no like, oh, well, like, why wouldn't I have let him in? Like, how am I supposed to know? I'm a 10-year-old girl. I don't know spirit rules.
Yeah.
Fuck you. There's none of that. She goes, that was totally my bad. And I will go and I will speak to him. I will make this right. And I think that there's a lot of that. And it's part of, for me, that's what Haku is doing too, is that like he still has respect for Yubaba and he's still going to, explain to her that he's leaving. And it's kind of nice.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that makes her not as bad as everyone makes her out to be.
Right.
If you like,
well, maybe she is this boss that's like just in over her head and just too many things going on, and so it's made her really callous. Because she reminds me of like 1980s stock market boss kind of situations.
Yeah, she's a single mother.
Yeah.
She's a single mother trying to make the best out
She had to
of her
push that
situation.
enormous baby out of her vagina.
Yeah. Oh, and her sister doesn't have. She's living the dream by herself.
All right, talk about No Face.
Okay. No Face is so lonely.
What? The octaves just went.
He's so lonely. And it kind of breaks my heart that he's, clearly like not kind of invited to be with the cool kids. But he has this like lonely spirit existence where nobody wants to talk to him. Nobody makes eye contact with him. There is a part where he's on the bridge and in the very beginning when Chihiro's holding her breath to try to not be spot by the other spirits, when she's with Haku, and she makes eye contact with him and he follows her gaze for a bit, but it's like she is the only one actually looking at him. Everybody else ignores him. And he makes this connection with her and he sees like, okay, all of these people love gold. So I have this debt to repay to my new friend, my only friend, because I have nothing and nobody, that I'm going to try and give her gold. And she doesn't want it. And he's just like, I just wanted to give you something because it's just like, I want you to like me and I like you. And you're the first person who has liked me, and she doesn't want to take it. And it just tears him apart. And I think it's so sweet at the end that he ends up like getting taken on by Zeniba, and it's like you just need something or somebody to be with, like, and even says that, I don't know if I was watching the second half of the movie in with subtitles, and so the part where he starts vomiting all the things after she gives him the river spirit medicine, he says a few times like, I'm so lonely. I'm just so lonely. And it just makes me so sad.
So what you like so much about No Face is he's a stalker. He's a creepy stalker, dude. If you walked a bridge, you looked at somebody's eyes and then just kept walking, and then that guy started following you everywhere you went and was like offering you all kinds of gifts after you're like, no, I'm good, and he kept pursuing and pursuing, you wouldn't be like, oh, you're so cute. You'd be like, get this fucking guy away from me.
And listen, I've been there.
Yeah. It's not pleasant.
It's not, but I didn't say that I love him.
You said he's the most tragic character
and
in
I still
film.
feel that way. I feel like he's super, super tragic. There's something so sad. There's something deeply, deeply sad about his character.
Get a life, loser.
Jesus.
Is there a reason for his him to be ostracized?
I don't know. And that's kind of something that has never been explained to me either. And I find it super fucking creepy that he doesn't have a face, so he kind of wears a mask on it. And when he gets really, really big, he ends up having a mouth.
Mm-hmm. And hair.
Oh, you guys, we have a surprise guest.
Uh-oh.
I told Tierney she could come in and crash the party for a second to talk about
Spirited Away.
spirits.
Tierney, of course, is Kat's sister, who is doing a just took a Studio Ghibli class, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Is she on?
Hi, Tierney, are you on?
No, I'm not.
I see.
No, sorry. It took me a second to get my dial in.
That's okay.
Correct. Coming to you live from a day's hotel in Flagstaff, Arizona.
Fancy.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Tierney, this is Vance.
Hello.
Vance.
Hi.
And this is Joe.
What's up, Tierney?
Hello.
And I am your dear, dear sister.
All right,
It's
now
a pleasure to meet you finally.
Now we've got a 4-way podcast, a 4-way battle. I'm going to have to battle 3 people.
No. So Tierney, I have a couple of questions for you.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between the kami and the yokai?
So kami are deities like that you could think of a little bit more like gods, and yokai are the etymology is pretty informative on this. So for example, like a synonym for yokai could be mononoke. And it's so when you think of that, you think of sort of like ethereal spirits. There's an idea of like intangibility, of mischievousness, of mysteriousness. So when we talk about them sort of as being like demons, monsters, spirits, something like that, that's a little bit closer, whereas a kami is sort of more of a
minor deity.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, I think they can be considered more minor, but sort of broadly, yokai is an interesting word because it's sort of a catch-all for supernatural things.
And so you say that in Spirited Away in the bathhouse, those are all yokai.
Yeah, that's my sense for sure. I mean, Yubaba is a witch, and then you have all of these different spirits that are mysterious. They are sort of mysterious, mischievous, and they also refer to a lot of cultural specificities, which they do have their basis in folklore going back like pre-Heian period, but the majority of what you see, the kappa, the tengu, spirits like that have a lot of them come out of more like the Tokugawa or Edo period, and a lot of them are either sort of modernized versions or more sort of formalized versions of older spirits from folklore, and some of them people just like made up on the spot. They're just like, oh, this would be a cool one, and then they made it.
So it's basically like there are 150 Pokemon, aka yokai, and then they just started adding more and more and more. So now it'd be impossible to collect them all.
It's catch them all.
Oh, I'm sorry. Catch them all. I'm thinking about the playing cards.
That's got to do more with consumerism, which actually has a very interesting tie into No Face. So there was, I think I was telling you earlier that there was a skeletal find of a malformed snake of some kind within this village called Yoshi, and there were a lot of people who were actually really hoping that it was this serpent yokai that existed. And around the same time as there was an investigation being done into that in Kyoto, there was an institute that was developed for looking at these for folklore studies. And when they created a database for it, they found that they sort of calling all this information to trawling over historical records and folktales and oral tradition and so forth, they came up with more than 13,000 entries for yokai.
Wow.
Yeah, and when the database went public, it had like 180,000 hits in its first month. I mean, it was really of interest to a lot of people.
That's wild.
So
I mean, we were saying earlier that Miyazaki came up with all of the creatures in this film. It's just all these creatures that nobody had ever seen before, and they were super, super imaginative. But in some ways, that's kind of going along culturally with what Japan has done with yokai in the past. Just keep making them up.
Oh yeah, totally. And the other thing is that it's not even necessarily that they're totally pulled out of nowhere. He's somebody who's super influenced by his life experiences. So the stink monster was directly correlated to an experience he had with a polluted river near his home. And I think he actually regularly participates in cleanup
I mean, yeah, that
things for that river.
That wouldn't surprise me at all. I mean,
that wouldn't shock me at all.
That's like his main thing is like the environment and how people are fucking it up.
Yeah, I mean, so much of his work is about that tension, right? So if you have something like Nausicaä, which is you're watching environment reclaim technology, but you're also seeing it used because he really loves technology also.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of his films deal with that tension.
Tierney, do you like this movie or no? Are you a fan or no?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
sure.
definitely. It's not my favorite. Mononoke is my hands down favorite, but no, I think there's a really good case to be made for Spirited Away being like on its face interesting and having a lot of stuff going on. I mean, if people like what they like and they can be as wrong as they want. Um,
Amazing. All right. Do you have any last things you want to talk about with Spirited Away before I let you go?
oh, yeah, just to say that I think that as a film, it follows sort of a really interesting logic. I was thinking about this before when you and I were talking about pacing and sort of like why Sen makes the choices she does along the way. And I was thinking about Alice in Wonderland as a good comparison. Obviously, maybe a little bit too on the nose, but when Alice arrives, she doesn't start going like, "What the fuck" at everything. Eventually, she's just like, "I got to go with the flow in order to like preserve myself." And I think that seems to be what happens with Sen, and why some things might seem a little like, okay, so she's just doing that now. But anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point.
Oh, and also No Face's blatant consumerism is the emptiness in all of us. That's my final thought.
Wow, that was fucking.
that makes sense.
That was hot topic as fuck.
That really brought it back.
All right. Anyway, toodles.
Thank you, Tierney.
Bye, Tierney.
Anyway, sorry for the sister interruption, but I knew she had some good things to say about some of that stuff.
She could have stuck around.
I was so confused. You were like, "We have a special guest." I was like, "Did Vance's cat like walk across the screen or something?" Well, we're gonna have her on for Mononoke, right?
Yeah, we are gonna have her back for Mononoke. Yeah. So we're gonna have Tierney back for Mononoke. As she said, it's her favorite film. So you'll get to hear a lot more of her expertise,
her insight
and her insights on Ghibli and Miyazaki. Yeah. So I think we finished our discussion on No Face.
Well, I did have one thing to say. Like
Sure.
the first thing he tries to give her are those bath tokens, that she doesn't accept for some reason. I didn't understand her reluctance to accept anything from him outside of like it's just to show how innocent she is. She's pure. She's not like greedy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, all right, he's handing you some gold. He's handing you the bath tokens. Yeah.
I think you're onto something with the greed thing, especially because that comes up so much. There's a lot of things that greed equals bad that you see as ramifications of actions, especially with No Face.
This is one of the conflicting notes that I have between my first go round with this and this new one. So the first go round, I wrote like everyone's vilifying Chihiro for letting No Face in, but like how is she supposed to know that he's a monster? And like Yubaba's like, you shouldn't let a No Face in, blah blah. It's like, how the fuck is she supposed to know? Like kind of like what you were talking about earlier, Kat. But this time around I was like, why would she let him in? Like just a creepy spirit in the dark in the rain, just kind of like standing there staring, and she's like, you want to come in? It's like, no, dude. Like,
I think it's probably because they're all creepy to her. They're all monsters,
Well, I had Joe's thought too of like when she let him in. I was like, because this is still the point where she's a very naive person, like, and not naive like, oh, I'm in a weird place, I don't know stuff. She just doesn't know like what soap is. Sometimes it seems like certain things, like she doesn't know how to clean. Like she can't pick up a piece of coal. Like,
yeah.
So then there's just a guy standing in the rain staring at her, and she's like, "Hey, I'm just gonna leave the door open for you." And what Kat said earlier, like she made eye contact on the bridge, which I had forgotten about. So that gives that a little leeway for she actually does recognize him from earlier.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that makes sense. Otherwise, it's like this creepy stalker is like, I don't know,
just out in the rain. If they had a different music, it could be cut up as like a horror movie, I think.
It's like Scream.
Oh, it totally
like Scream
could.
or something. Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely. I don't know why. So that train scene when they're going to Zeniba's place, everyone of the reviews that I've read has been like, this is the most beautiful scene in the movie, and it's so tragic and just gorgeous. And I want to know why, because I felt like that was just like they made that so long and for no reason that I was just like, what is this showing? Like, I know that there's a bunch of spirits on there, and they have like this really dramatic, sappy music on, and like people are getting off of the train and they're like going back to their spirit work job or spirit work home or some shit. And people are like, this is so devastatingly beautiful. And like,
Now, I haven't read anything that's mentioned much about that scene, but I did read one of Roger Ebert's essays about the film, and it was a rewatch for him. And he said that on the rewatch, what he noticed more about the film is what could have not been there. And he didn't mean that in like a what I would have lost from this, just the stuff that you could lose from the movie and it would still totally work, but how much he loved those things. And he said that in a lot of Miyazaki's films, he has all these moments where it's not really advancing the plot, but you just take a moment to be in the time and the space. And it can be just like looking over a cliff at the ocean, or just these moments to kind of let it breathe. So it's not just like action after action after action. And Roger Ebert talked to Miyazaki about it because they met at a film festival. I think it was Toronto, but I'd have to check. But Miyazaki says there's a word for it in Japanese, and that it was done very deliberately to have those moments where not much is happening. And
the word is filler.
The word no, the word is ma, M-A. And it's those empty moments between bigger moments. And I was like, oh, you can kind of see that in some of Miyazaki's work, that he has these moments where he just kind of lets it breathe and lets it settle, lets you kind of take in the last sort of bit of stuff that's happened. And I think that the train scene is definitely one of those moments, because there was so much going on with the like Haku hitting the building and being covered in blood, and maybe he's gonna die. And then Kamaji had like the train tickets, but then Chihiro has to go talk to No Face, and then he starts vomiting everywhere, and it seems like she's gonna die because he's chasing after her. And then it's like, oh, like it's like a deep breath. And I think that's the case for the characters as well when they kind of sit down on this train.
With that, there's a big, I have this in my note, that push-in of her face, that profile push-in on her face when she's on the train, that like solemn look, and they kind of end the movie with another push-in on her face kind of profile too. Like those are the moments where that's like the moment where she's become like the hero that she needed to be, kind of on that train. Like she's the one that like tells No Face to sit down next to her. She's got the baby and the bird crow witch sidekick.
Yeah, she's handling it.
And like she's in charge in this moment. Like she's on this ride. Like she's leading it. Which happens like right after like the river monster and all that stuff. Like, and I think those moments are done well. And you're right, it needs a breather after that. Otherwise, you're just going straight into action.
Yeah.
And I think Joe's issue comes more from him reading someone saying how beautiful it was and coming to that, as opposed to like,
it was insanely long and it didn't really advance anything. And I don't know, maybe I just want action, but I feel like the next scene where she's with Zeniba isn't action. Like that could have been the breath scene, because then we get clarity about like what's going to happen with No Face, what the curse of her pendant thing was. Like we don't need that extra Ma moment, I don't think.
It might be a little too long. But I think you need something, because they're about to go face this witch villain that they think is a villain. Like when you think they get there, you think it's going to be a big battle or something. You don't know what's going to happen, so you need to build up the tension of like what will happen when they get there.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah,
too.
I can agree that it's a little long.
But again, that's the part of the movie where it starts to that's the lull that I talk about. That's the part where I'm like, oh, I think I don't think I want to keep watching this now.
Yeah.
I could go to the bathroom, I could whatever. But I think the first time I watched it, you know, it didn't feel that way. And yeah, it's nice to have this like breather for a second, but it's because you expect more action to come after it. And then when it's like, oh, everything's kind of cool, and also you don't have to go back to Haku, he's here, just go look outside.
Yeah,
you made it.
Yeah, that is. That's what, for me, I felt like the end of the movie is rushed for a movie this long. Like,
yeah.
With this ending, I just feel like if you already didn't like the movie, Joe, like once you get to this part and it slows down, you're just not gonna like it.
Oh,
like,
for sure.
No matter what. Like, because other movies that you've liked have had these moments in it.
maybe that's just what I like. I don't know. Maybe
That
I'm
makes
not.
sense.
You know. Okay. I want to ask you guys a couple things because
Okay.
this is the part that I wanted to really talk about hardcore and why I think Chihiro is the biggest dope in the world. All right.
This is part of your fun game show?
This is my game show. I want
Okay.
you guys to defend these decisions.
Oh my god. I hate this. I hate this game show.
Yeah, this is.
This was going so well.
Let's see what these questions are.
All right. So here's like I have a lot of hate towards Chihiro, and these are my reasons why. Because it's not unfounded. A lot of times I feel like when I say that I don't like Chihiro, Kat, you look at me like, how could you fucking not like her? Here are several occasions why I don't like Chihiro. Okay. First of all, when she goes to the spirit world, when she's first dropped into this, and Haku is kind of like, hey, we have to walk across this bridge, hold your breath, otherwise the spirits will see you and they will hunt you down. And there's also a witch that if she sees you, she'll kill you. So hold your breath as you're crossing this bridge. She's crossing the bridge. She doesn't hold her breath.
That's not because she just decides to stop.
Wait,
She gets
Is this the question? Is this the question?
She gets
yet? Or
shocked.
This is a reason why I think she's a dope.
Wait, is that the end of your statement?
That's
now?
the end of the
Is that
first
you were
one.
done?
that's
Okay.
him saying now defend this.
Oh, can I jump in?
Yeah,
to this
go
real
for
quick?
it, please.
Okay. Technically, the frog comes and stops them before they get over there. That's one thing. But the biggest issue I have with it is that he says if the witch finds you, she will kill you.
Yeah.
And then his whole plan is for her to run and get brought to the witch.
No. That's not his plan. Because that's point number 2.
That is his plan. His plan is to go to that guy, ask for work.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Vance on this, but
No, that is
Yeah.
not
okay,
true.
Go. It is. Okay.
Because
go
he
for it.
tells her to go to Kamaji, the Boilermaker,
Yeah.
and get work. He says get work with him, not with Yubaba.
No, but here's the thing. He says no matter what he says, say that you want work and just keep asking for work.
And
right?
stay
And-
there.
No. And then when he sends her up to the witch, right? The witch is the only rule that she has is that if someone asks for work, she has to give him a job. So he knows that. Haku knows that. Haku knows that this guy's gonna send her to the witch
yeah.
because that's the
then
only thing.
why is Haku telling her to stay away from the witch because she'll kill her?
That's the thing. That's the point I'm saying. That point doesn't make any sense, and that's not on her.
I think it has to do with the witch's scout, the little bird before it becomes a tiny bird that you don't want to be found by that thing. So she has to manage to go through the inside. It's an inside job that she has to show up in this place to ask for work from this, but she can't just go straight to that.
No,
Joe's
dude.
ideal movie with her in the basement lugging coal for like an hour and a half.
That's exactly what she
and
should
then
have done.
and then he comes back and he's like, I figured a way out.
Yeah, because she's acting like a fucking dumbass.
But I think when you make these points, it's like you've never seen a movie before where the plan changes or somebody doesn't do something that somebody's told them to do. Like this is new for
That's
you.
the reason movies happen.
if I do see movies like that and then they do that, I'm like, that's fucking stupid. You should have stayed with what you were told to do.
Right.
That's my whole point. It's like and then she gets the medicine from the river monster, which she magically knows what it is. And she's like, I can use this to save my parents. And then she just gives it out willy-nilly to everybody like she forgot all about her
I
parents.
feel like so far the things you've been
that was a big one for me though. She had that and she was like, I think if I give this to my parents, it will change them back. And then I think she runs to the pig place and she can't find, or was that a dream?
That was a dream.
Okay, it was a dream. Okay. Yeah, she definitely starts giving away the medicine that saves her parents, which seems like another layer on there.
And I can understand giving half of it to Haku because he's been the only person that's been like, I'll help you get your parents back. And she needs Haku in order to get to her parents.
But you don't get No Face, who's eating everybody and causing
Not if it's
destruction.
not if it's the
people.
last piece to save your parents.
And also, fuck those people. They enslaved her, and she's working in a bathhouse with those. Like, I don't give a fuck about those people. I give a fuck about my parents and getting out of here.
But I mean, she's doing something, which is part of the reason why they're endeared to her later, because she saves all of them, which is why they're cheering at the end for her. You know?
Wait, she saves all of them? What do you mean?
Yeah, when she saves them from No Face when he becomes a crazy monster.
Yeah.
and she rectifies the problem that
Yeah.
she caused, and I think that
Yeah.
that is a morally good thing, and again taking responsibility for her actions.
And then at the end, after everyone that she knows is like, she knows at least that Lynn doesn't want to be there. So it's safe to assume that none of them want to be there.
I don't think you can jump to that.
I think you can.
Okay.
It is the
And
weirdest.
everybody
I don't
doesn't like Yubaba. They're all under her control. They all have had their names taken away, it seems like. We don't even
I
know
don't
what
think-
Lynn's real name is. And then she just like dips out on all the friends that she made. And she's like, all right, I'm going to go back with my parents later. And then also Haku's like, I'll see you around. I'll see you another time. It's like, no, you won't. You're apartments now, dude. The river's gone.
Yeah, that was the tie-in with the girl who left through time. It's another girl having to wait for a guy who's never going to show up again. Like,
That's a very,
yeah.
very fair point.
Like, I was just like, really? He's like, I'll meet up with you again. And she's just going to be looking out the window, swimming in random rivers,
Just-
looking for this person.
Just setting
Like-
fire to apartment buildings.
Yeah.
I want the Haku back.
Yeah. And I can't wait for the parents to get back to those movers who have, it's been like 2 weeks
Yeah,
or
how
whatever.
long do you think it's been? How long do you think she's been there?
Well, it doesn't.
By
At least
the end.
5 days. Well, it looks like the car's been a wreck forever, but
It's also
at
she's
least a couple of days.
Yeah, it's been at least 3, I think.
But it could have been like a month.
Or maybe
Yeah,
it's
we don't know how
Inception
time works.
time,
Yeah.
and it's like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, no, they're really implying that it's definitely not Inception time because he's like, there's dust on the seats.
Yeah.
Like, how is all this stuff on the car already? Like, those movers
Yeah.
are not at the house anymore.
No, they got
No,
the keys
yeah.
though.
That's
Everything's
right. They're
set up.
living in the house.
They're
now.
good.
They've been there for 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. He lost the job that he moved to
Yeah.
town for.
The real tragedy is what happens directly after this film.
Yes, I really want to see that. I was like,
There's
yeah, I
a
want to see
truancy
you back.
officer out for Chihiro who hasn't shown up at school.
Yeah, I want to see how you did a 3-point turn to turn that car around on that
Yeah,
one-way road.
right?
Like,
Yeah, these are the big questions we should really be
Yeah.
asking. All right, I think we should start making our way towards wrapping this up.
hmm
So, should we give our amp numbers?
C.
Joe, why don't you go first?
So the first time that we reviewed this movie, I gave it a 2 out of 11, and that was cause for a cat being like, "Are you fucking serious?" I think that you may have gotten up and stormed out.
it is amazing with all the things you've watched that this is that low,
Right?
Or at
Yeah,
least it was
I think
that low.
that's what the shock
So-
was.
Upon second viewing and re-seeing some of the things, because I would like to listen to that first episode, I think, just to see like what was I so mad about, because like watching it again, I still don't like it. I still think that Chihiro sucks. I think that she acts really dumb, and some of her decision making is bad for her goal, which is from the beginning of her parents becoming pigs to the exact end of the movie. She makes a lot of bad decisions that put her in conflict with achieving that goal. I am going to up it to a 4 out of 11.
I wanted to get a 4 out of him. This is so great. I got a 4.
And my job is done. I just disappeared.
I still don't like it. I still don't see what all the fuss is about.
And I really respect that your points were consistent. You know, things that bumped
Yeah.
for you the first time bumped for you the second time.
Yeah, the only inconsistency was like the letting No Face in, which was just like, why would she let No Face in versus why wouldn't she let No Face in? But like how is she supposed to know? So yeah, 4 out of 11. You know what? 3.9 out of 11.
You son of a bitch. It's written in stone. You can't take it back.
Yeah.
Etched it into my
Just
marble
Just
table.
edit that out, yeah.
Vance, where does your amp go up to? Where do you crank it?
All right, so the amp is out of 11, so I always have to calculate that extra point around it. I think I remember when I first watched this movie that I was a little bit in Joe's camp of like, it was just this big thing, like it was the greatest animated thing ever, and I think I watched it and I was like, all right, that was okay. Watching it again this time, I was really enjoyed the look of it, the feel of the movie. and I felt like I'm watching a movie that's at least fun to watch and inventive and creative. And no, I just enjoyed it. I could have stayed with the Sootballs characters and like those guys, like just all the unique characters, the animation style. So I enjoy this movie more than I thought I would. I'll give it like an 8.5 out of give it an 8.5. I think
Nice.
it's a pretty good movie. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you just said, Vance, is definitely my feelings on this film. Just the level of detail, and like you're saying about the soot sprites, these little moments that are so charming and cute. And sometimes there's important dialogue happening off screen where you can just hear it, and then there's a little mini scene going on, within the scene that you're watching. And I love that mix of stuff where, so instead of just watching two people talk to each other about these kind of expository things, like you have this other thing to look at. And I think there's a lot of little things like that all over the place. Those little details of tiny scenes within scenes, and also the detail of the animation, all the background characters also being animated individually. And this film will always have a special place in my heart as at the time watching it became my favorite Miyazaki film. And now, I have more mixed feelings about it, especially after watching so many other anime films. But this is a 9.5 for me.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Vance, for joining us. I know Joe already thanked you, but I wanted to personally thank you as well. Because it's always
thanks for having me. I love coming here.
Absolute pleasure to have you.
And follow us on the social media at the Anime Movie Podcast on Instagram. Follow our YouTube channel. Just look up the Anime Movie Podcast. We post videos and whole episodes now of this podcast. What else? If you want to email in, the Anime Movie Podcast at gmail.com. And I think that's everything. So yeah, see you later, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Anime Movie Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at the Anime Movie Podcast, and you can reach out via email at the Anime Movie Podcast at gmail.com. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell a friend. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.